Hello and welcome to Adobe XD and the 10 things that beginners want to know how to do. So my name is Terry White and I'm the worldwide design and photography evangelist for Adobe. It's my pleasure to walk you through this amazing application. So with that said, let's dive right in. So I've got Adobe XD running. So by the way, Adobe XD stands for Experience Design. It's for UI, user interface, and UX, user experience designers. It's a prototyping tool. That's really what it's all about. So I've got XD open. Of course, it shows my recent files, which we're going to get to that in a minute. But it also shows me some presets, some templates I can begin with. So if I want to begin on mobile, I can choose the various iOS and Android devices. If I want to begin on tablets, I can choose those. If I'm building a prototype of a website, I get the most common sizes there. And of course, if I want to make my own custom size, no problem, just put it in. So if you're designing a UI or user experience for some device or new invention, this would be the place to start. Now, before we get going, I just want to let you know something that I've downloaded. Since the UI designs that I will do, for the most part, will be for iOS devices, Apple's devices, I did download the Apple UI kit. So they have one specifically for Adobe XD. We'll see that in a few minutes. And of course, they've got one for Google and Microsoft Windows and various wireframes and more UI kits. More. All right, so with that said, I'm just going to pop over and my current device is an iPhone 10. As soon as I choose that as my template or preset, it begins giving me the first look at Adobe XD. So the first thing we see is the artboard. It's showing me an iPhone 10 size blank artboard, and this would be very similar to working with artboards in Illustrator and Photoshop, which we're going to get to that soon too. You also have some basic drawing tools here. Now this is not meant to replace Illustrator. And of course you can draw in Illustrator if there's something more complex that you want to draw, and copy and paste those in as vectors in SVG, or you can place them in using the import command. So this is just for the things that you want to do quickly right here while you're in XD, but if you want a better drawing experience, that's what Illustrator is for. And just like if you want better photo editing, that's what Photoshop is for. You could bring those elements in as well. So we got the standard panels over here. I've got the layers panel open. I'm going to close that for now. There's also an assets panel. I'm going to close that for now because we're going to get to that in just a minute. Over on the right-hand side, we got the contextual panel for basically like a properties panel for making all your adjustments. Then you've got all your previewing and sharing options at the top here. So of course, you've got the basic menus, including the export menu for exporting your assets out. We're going to get to that at the end. And let's go ahead and dive in and get started. So for example, let's say I wanted to have a different background on my artboard. So I can either A, draw a background, or B, simply select the background that's already there, the artboard itself, and give it a different color. So I can make this any color I want, or I can of course draw a frame and put something in it. Now you also have access to your CC libraries. So if I bring up my CC libraries, I have access to all my CC libraries. If I want to bring in something from Adobe Stock, I can bring in various stock images like these kids and just drop them right in, and they come right in linked to that library. Of course, I can scale. Look, no shift key. It will scale proportionally by default, which is a great thing. And of course, I can move that around. That image hasn't been licensed yet, but I can of course get it and play with it and see what I want. Now I also have the ability to work with text. So if I wanted to put some text on the page that simply said, learn, I'm going to center that. So we're going to do a few things here. We're going to learn Adobe XD. And of course, I can select that text. I can make it whatever color I want. Let's move the libraries out of the way. Let's get to the fill color here. So I want that to be a lighter color, and if I want that to be a different font, this shouldn't be surprising. This is kind of vector editing 101. So let me get to one of my favorite sans serif fonts, which is Ephra. And of course, it comes in different styles. So we'll do an Ephra medium there. And now what I want to do is draw the element that I want to be my icon. So I've got my Adobe XD. I can move that around, get that centered right on the artboard itself. And now I'm just going to go ahead and draw a basic rectangle. something we've been doing in drawing programs since the beginning of time. And of course, I've got the ability, just like in Illustrator, to make instant rounded corners. So this is great if you're trying to make buttons or UI elements, search boxes, things like that. I can undo that. And of course, you might say, well, wait, where's the direct selection tool? How do I get to the individual points or paths? So I can do it a couple ways. I can double click on the object. That will drill down into it. I can also hold down my Command key, Mac PC Control key, to get to the options for direct select as well. So I'm just going to grab those 2 points and pull them up a little bit. Now, sadly, in this version, there is no, there's no flip. I want to flip that horizontally. Actually, I want to duplicate it first, then flip it horizontally. So I'm going to go ahead and duplicate it. Same way I always do. I'm going to hold down my Option or Alt key and drag it over. And if I held down the Shift key in addition, it would bring it over perfectly straight. Now I'm going to go ahead and just flip it over manually. Because I made it equal distance, it will flip over nicely. I can hold down my Shift key then and get that just the way I want. All right, so we're beginning to make our icon of a book. I'm going to go grab the pen tool one more time. I'm just going to go ahead and come in here and click and come to the center there and click one more time. And that is it for that object as well. So we'll go ahead and select that object and we'll give that object a fill of, it already has a fill of white. There we go. And same thing, I need a duplicate of that. So I'm just going to hold down my Option key to start dragging it and making the duplicate, hold down my Shift key to keep it perfectly straight. And once I get it on the exact edge, I'll just flip it over. And then, of course, move it into place. And that becomes our book icon. Now, I'm going to go ahead and select all these pieces. And then, of course, get that right in the center as well. So now, together, all of this is my Learn XD icon. Of course, I can increase the point size of that a bit. Let's go ahead and try 30 point. Ooh, maybe not 30 point. How about 24 point? That's better. And let's select all of that together. So I'm just going to go ahead and drag, select all of that. And I'm going to scale it down a bit. Just scale the whole thing. It's a little too big. And again, we'll get it in the center. And one of the things that I want to point out is that when I go to the Assets panel here, I have the ability to add colors, to add character styles, to add symbols. And these are great when you want to reuse them. We're going to use them a little bit later on. I'm going to go ahead and click Add this as a symbol. Now, what's a symbol and why does that matter? I'm going to close the libraries for now. I'm kind of done with it for this few seconds. And let's say I go ahead and add some more artboards. So I grab my artboard tool, I just click, boom, there's another one, artboard number 2. You can name those 2. You don't have to call them 2, 3, 4, and 5 because that will become confusing. So at any time, if you want to double click and change the name and say maybe that was the welcome screen, this is the search screen maybe, so forth and so on. Basically, you're designing the user interface for whatever comes next. So that's on page 1 or welcome or the home screen, whatever you want to call it, of the app. We'll call it home. And then on page 2 would be the search. And I would begin building out the search. But I want that same element. So let's go ahead and do a couple things here. We can make this the same fill color. We can actually grab the eyedropper and sample that and get the exact same color. And by the way, you also, I should have done it this way. Let's go ahead and get rid of this artboard. Let's get rid of this artboard. You also have Command D for duplicate, Control D on Windows for duplicate. That way I get the exact same artboard color and everything. I have to do that over and over. Now I'm going to go ahead and just go Option, drag these books. And let's say that I want to put this on this page. I want to put it on this page or this artboard and so forth and so on. Now, of course, this is no different than duplicating anything in any program. You can just drag and drop, hold down your Option key, make your duplicates, get them anywhere you want. But what if you needed to update it? When you're doing UI and UX design, you're often drawing buttons that are replicated throughout the entire user interface, like the home button or the start button or the search button or the whatever button it is, especially on websites. You have the same buttons on every page. If you make a change, the last thing you want to have to do is go duplicate all of that stuff and resize it and get it everywhere you want it to go again. So what I can do, because this is a symbol, it treats it as a single object, but if I double click on it, I can drill down into it. And for example, let's say I change the color of the right side of the book to be red. And as you can see, it instantly replicated that across all instances of that symbol. So you can use symbols for things that you're going to repeat throughout your UI, UX design, and easily and quickly update them just by making a change to the symbol itself, and it will replicate throughout. Now, if you don't want it to be a symbol, don't make it a symbol, then that element won't change. Okay, so let's recap so far. So of the 10 things, what we're doing right now is navigating the app. We also did number 2, which is creating artboards. Now, part of number 2 is also the ability to create a scrolling artboard. So for example, if I were to double click on this artboard, the minute I pull down past the original size, that means that I want this artboard to be longer, because on this screen of my app or my website or whatever it is I'm designing, the content is more than one screen, more than one page, more than one display. So just by making the artboard longer, you've automatically made it a scrolling artboard. And this is determining how much will show on that screen before it starts to fall off onto the screen where they have to scroll. So that's easy to make a scrolling artboard. Just extend the artboard that you need to be able to scroll, and you can just start putting content past the scroll line. For example, like that. I just duplicated this photo. So they wouldn't see that photo initially until they scroll down. Okay, so we've done number 3, drawing, importing images, text. You can import images also from your library or from the file menu. So you can just go to File and Import. Number 4, we've also talked about the Assets panel and the Styles panel. We're getting through this pretty quickly. Number 5, let's talk about preview. So there's a couple ways to preview your application. I'm going to bring up my iOS device here as well. But if you, first of all, you can go to your window menu and just simply hit preview. And that will preview the artboard you're on. So in other words, that gave me the scrolling artboard that I just saw there. Also, if you, here, let me go back to that artboard just for a second. If you have a mobile device that supports the Adobe XD app. So I'm just going to go to my Adobe folder here. I'm going to scroll over and launch the Adobe XD app. Now, the Adobe XD app lets me see my XD files one of 2 ways. Either XD documents that I've saved to my Creative Cloud folder. I have a couple there that show up in my Creative Cloud folder. Even if they were buried inside of a folder, it found them. And of course, then I have live preview. Live preview requires you to be plugged in. In other words, when I bring up live preview, that shows me exactly what I'm working on in XD at any given time. So if I were to click that, or not, click there, I can scroll it on my phone. So just scrolling that artboard on my phone shows it. If I make any changes or switch to a different artboard, it shows me that artboard live on my mobile device. So that is the live preview on mobile if you just want to test things. And speaking of testing, we're going to get to the interactivity in just a few minutes. All right, so with that said, we kind of quickly learn a lot of basics right off the bat. You can make additional artboards. Your artboards can, by the way, they don't have to be the same size that we talked about before. So if you go to the artboard tool, you'll see that you can bring in different artboards of different sizes in the same document. They don't all have to be the same screen size. So maybe you're showing how it would look on a phone, how it would look on a tablet, how it would look on the web, if you needed to make that type of UI. And of course, you can make your own custom sizes as well. So just like Illustrator can have multiple artboards and Photoshop can have multiple artboards of different sizes, so can Adobe XD. All right, so let's get to number 6. And before I can get to number 6, I've got to bring up another document. This document is kind of cute. It's basic. We haven't done a lot with it. But we're going to bring up a document now that has a little bit more going on. So I'm going to go to Open Recent. And I open up an app design called SIA. And this is designed by Serge Vassal, is the person who created all this. And that's great. I purposely got rid of some of the content so I can show you how you would rebuild it in this app. So I'm going to just hit the letter Z to go to my zoom tool. zoom into the app so we can see it. And it's very visually rich, nicely done, lots of buttons, lots of icons. We're going to get to all of that in just a second. Also, you can see the Assets panel has quite a bit in it. It's got some colors in it, it's got some character styles in it, and of course it's got some great symbols in it as well. And of course, if you want to do your own drawing, you can, just like we did before. So if I go to my pen tool and I say, hey, this needs a button on it, as a matter of fact, I'm going to start the button right there. I'm just going to make it a little slant. Everything in this app is kind of designed in a slant, which is kind of cool. Let's go ahead and just, again, move this over. I could have drawn a rectangle and just resized it that way as well. Now I can go ahead and just fill that with whatever color I want. Let's click out of it. Let's get to it again. There we go. And we want to fill that with a color. And we also want to, sometimes things are hidden, like we can't see it, because it may not be in the front. So let's bring it to the front so we can see it. Oh, it's there, we just don't have the fill. Ah, I see the fill isn't checked. I was picking the right color, I wasn't checking it. So that's a beginner mistake. All right, so there we go. We've got our object filled with our red color, and let's make sure we got the right red on that object. Let's click it one more time, great. And now I'm gonna go ahead and grab my type tool, and I'm gonna go ahead and just click here, right in the center, and I'm going to type the words sign up. All right, and same thing, I want that to be centered. Yep, center justification, but I didn't start centered, so let me move it over to the center. Thankfully for smart guys, it makes it easy. I can, of course, pick the color that I want, and this is what makes the styles great. If I just wanted to make the color of the existing font, great, but he's already got some great styles here to make it consistent with the look and feel of the rest of the app. So just click the ACM Pro Extended Condensed White 32 point, and that gives me exactly what I need. All right, the next thing is I noticed that the symbols are sometimes it's hard to see depending on what's on the background there. These little plus signs or buttons. This is a symbol, by the way. And I can tell it's a symbol by just scrolling it and finding it in the symbol. Now, I also have the ability to right click and say highlight on canvas. Show me all the instances of a particular thing that's in my assets panel, which is also great to have. Now, for example, if I select this and just change the color, it replicates throughout. And of course, let me undo that. Let me drill down onto it and change the color so I don't change the color of the plus sign as well. All right, so now we've got the colors in place, we've got our symbols in place, we got everything in place except number 6. Number 6, let's do number 6. I'm gonna go ahead and bring up my Creative Cloud libraries one more time because I took the time to draw a shape the way I wanted it to look so that I wouldn't have to spend the time getting the size and everything just right here. So this is the shape I want, it's just a simple rectangle, similar to these that are on an angle. Now, it's in my library. If I drag it over, it'll stay linked. I want to drag it over unlinked. So I'm going to hold down my Option or Alt key. When I drag it over from a library, that brings it in as a vector object that is not linked to the original. So now I can get rid of the libraries panel for now. And I can double click on this, and voila, it is there. It's got its vector capabilities. I can manipulate this any way I want. Now I also want to bring in some images. So I can import them in, but sometimes it's easier for me to find what I'm looking for just with a simple drag and drop. So for example, if I'm looking for a particular image like this one or Cuba, like this one, I can drag it over, and as long as the object highlights in blue like that, that means it's going to go inside that object and mask it to that object, and that's great. All right, so we're going to do a couple things. We're going to bring in a photo. We're going to use one of our symbols. Let's do that as well. Let's bring up the Assets panel. And once I bring up the Assets panel, here's a symbol that I want. Just going to go ahead and drop that on. That's where I want that. And then last but not least, I'm going to go ahead and grab the Type tool. We're going to come down here and kind of line it up with that. And we'll go ahead and type the word Cuba. And this time I don't want it to be hold on, let's undo that. This time I don't want it to be left justified or center justified. I want it to be left justified. There we go. Cuba, there we go. And same thing, if I want that cuboid to be consistent with the rest, I believe that is this one to be consistent with the other ones that are over here. So great. We got our Plan Your Escape page kind of looking great. It's got the elements I want on it, but just like this one, I want it to be multiple times down the page. Now, of course, I can duplicate all these and then replace them, but there's a much better feature inside of Adobe XD. Number 6 is called Repeat Grid. I'm gonna go ahead and select that one, select that one, select this one. So I got all 3 objects selected. And over here in my properties panel, I've got the ability to just simply click Repeat Grid. Now you notice that gives me a handle on the right, and it also gives me a handle on the bottom. And as I pull this down, let me keep pulling it down to extend it beyond the canvas here. I can just keep going as long as I want. That will give me a repetition of all of those elements, and it repeats them. I also don't want that much space in between them. I want it just basically, I want them touching. So I can just pull up on the spacer and get those touching just the way I want. Now, okay, so what did that really save me? Command D or Option Drag, it just saved me from having to duplicate them one by one or manually. There's a little bit more to it than that. If I go back out and grab the images I really need, which is all of these, then what I can do is take all of those images and drop them into the repeat grid, and boom. It populates each of the grid squares, if you want to call them, even though they're not square, with those images. Now all I'd have to do is go in and change the individual things that are different. So for example, maybe this one's Mexico. I don't remember. Maybe this one's, if we scroll down, maybe this one is USA, or let's spell it out, United States, and the next one is whatever. Also, I noticed something else. There was a change, there was a request. Let's zoom in on this one symbol, and we want to swap this guy out with a different guy, and he's in my library. So once again, I go in to show my Creative Cloud libraries, and this guy is the one that needs to be replaced, so I just drag him right in to that same spot, and boom, it keeps the same shape, fills it in nicely, and that has replicated throughout the entire design. So everywhere, oh, not yet actually, it hasn't replicated through the entire design because I haven't done this. I haven't right-clicked on it and said, update all symbols. Now it's replicated throughout the entire design. So if I were to zoom in on this one over here, it's got the new guy. So that is the cool part about working with symbols. When you need to make a change that you need to replicate throughout the document, you can do it easily. Okay, now we've gotten to the most important part, what separates this from doing this inside Photoshop or Illustrator. Because at this point, you're probably saying, well, I already know Photoshop and Illustrator. I already know how to do artboards. I can do all this in Photoshop and Illustrator. Maybe not the repeat grid. Maybe not symbols as easily. Maybe not scrolling artboards. Maybe not previewing on your device. But let's say you could draw it all. You can create it all. What separates Adobe XD in a big way from Photoshop and Illustrator is the prototyping. So for example, you notice that we were in design mode the entire time. We were working in design mode up here. Next to it is prototype. And prototype lets you do your wiring, basically wiring things together where they should go. So for example, what happens when someone clicks sign up? Well, you notice now when I click sign up, there's this little pull whip from it. So I can pull the whip over to this artboard, and from this artboard, it goes to home empty when the person clicks on sign up. And I can, of course, choose whether or not, what kind of transition it's going to have, dissolve, slide left, slide right, so forth and so on. So let's, for example, let's do a slide left. All right, so now that we've got that, you can also, and now most of these are already wired up to where they go, but I noticed that the back buttons on some of these have not been wired up. So for example, for this one, this back button, this should go, if I just click on it, I can choose the artboard, it should go to back to home empty. Same thing here, this one should go to save trip. So I can either wire it myself or just choose it from the menu. This one should go to chat. So I can just drag it over and now it goes to chat. So any way that you want to wire your buttons up, you can do that. And you can make like a hidden button that will always take the person home, or a real button that always takes the person home. It is totally up to you. So wiring is just that easy. You decide basically the interaction that will happen when people walk through your design. All right, so I'm going to close the assets panel for now, just to get it out of our way. And okay, well, we already know we can preview on the phone. We can also preview here in the app. So I can say preview, and now I can click my sign up. Cool, I can click my plus sign, sweet. I can go to next. I can go back now. Oh, yeah, that works great. Okay, so previewing here is great, but one of the other things that you can do, and maybe you didn't notice that, and it's kind of telling me things here, maybe you didn't notice that, is that when we were in preview, there's a record button. So if you wanted to actually record a little video of how you should walk through the app, you can click record, and now you even get a little icon showing people, or a little indicator showing people where you're clicking, and that will make a movie of you walking through the app. It's showing people what happens when they click where. Of course, at any given time, you can stop. That will allow you to save your video as a movie file out to your hard drive, and then you can share that movie file. Speaking of sharing, let's go ahead and we might need to save this. Let's save this out as our work in progress. Let's call this our WIP, work in progress. We'll save this one out. And now when I go to share, I can publish a prototype, which XD has always been able to do. What's in beta is publishing the design specs. So when I say publish the design specs and create a public link, what that will do is generate basically an overview of the entire app, the specs for it. So that if I was giving this to an app designer and I need to give them the overall look, or giving it to my client and need to show them the overall look, they would be able to do it. So now it's uploading this as well, and uploading the 2x images so that it will work on high DPI devices. It also is hosting this as part of your Creative Cloud account. You'll get a link that you can copy and bring that up in a browser so you can see what it looks like. All right, so let's go ahead and open the link. I'll bring up my browser and show it to me. And this is what the design spec looks like. So again, it just gives them that view of the overall project of what the project is looking like and what you should be able to do, and even some instructions on how to manipulate it. Now let's go back to XD, because while the design specs is basically in beta, let me close that one more time. The big thing is giving someone the ability to actually walk through the app without you having to send them a movie, without you having to do it for them or having them at your computer. So if I go to share one more time, I've also got the ability to publish a prototype. And so I can allow for comments. I can open it full screen. I can show the hotspot hints. And brand new, I can even require a password. So if I wanted to make sure that no one sees this without the password, I can require a password too. So that's also a fairly new feature. So let's go ahead and publish this out. Again, it's going to build it all. This time it's building it not just as an overview, but it's actually building the walkthrough experience as an HTML5 web page. So they will be able to click their way through your app, just like I did a few minutes ago when I recorded it and I was showing it here on my local computer. So that would be the workflow. You design, you get everything looking the way you want. You add in all the wiring and the interactivity in the prototyping stage. You test it, you preview it, so you can make sure it all works on your end. Then you share it to whoever needs to look at it. And now when I say open that link, instead of seeing the whole thing, I just see the home page because that's where I am. So now I can click my way through it. I can go to the different pages. I can click next. I can click back. I can click next again, next again. I can walk my way through the entire app, and I can send that link to anyone on the web on any device. That is how Adobe XD works. Now, last but not least, and by the way, so we did number 6, repeat grid. We did number 7, prototyping and wiring. We did number 8, sharing web design specs. We did we didn't do number 9. Let's do number 9, is the ability to export your assets. So when we say export all the artboards, you can export for design, web, iOS, or Android. So you can give your developer or give the person you're going to hand this off to a great starting point. So that's one way that you can get this content to them. You can show them the web link so they see how it's all supposed to work. And then you actually export the assets for them to be able to use. All right, that's number 9. Now, number 10 is a biggie. It's brand new. And I kept teasing about this earlier. I said Photoshop and Illustrator. Before we get to that, let me show one thing I didn't show yet, and that is open your UI kits. So I have the Apple UI kit. I already have it downloaded. This is going to take me to the spot to where I can download it. And by the way, you can download it for Adobe XD. But I already have it downloaded. Let me show you where it is. I saved it on my hard drive. Maybe I saved it. Let's see. It is here. I saved it here. It is in my iOS XD. There we go. And for example, I can open up those UI elements and it opens it up as an XD file. So anything that you need, you can copy and paste right out of here. So you zoom in so that you're not having to build all this stuff from scratch. So if you needed a search box, if you needed a results box, if you needed an icon, if you needed the battery indicator, if you needed a home screen, this is all here designed in an XD format that is usable. So you can click on any of this, you can drill down onto it, you can edit it, you can change any part of it you want, copy and paste it into your design. I just wanted to show that before I forgot. All right, but that's not the big one. The big one is this. Let me pop back to my operating system one more time. And let me, let's just go back out of this one more time. And now let's go into, I've got a folder here called Prism Site Design. And this is a Photoshop file. So this was done years ago. It was done in 2016 in Photoshop. And it was designed to mock up a website. And that's great. But in Photoshop, as you know, it would be static. It's just images. There's nothing I can do with it. There's no interactivity. There's no prototyping. There's no showing someone what this looks like. And up until recently, if I wanted to have them see this as an XD file, I'd have to rebuild it from scratch. That all just went away. I can right-click on this now, and I can say Open with Adobe XD. When I say Open with Adobe XD, it will take my Photoshop file, all those artboards, and convert them into an XD project. So if you do prefer to do all your work in Photoshop, but then you want to take advantage of XD and do all your wiring and do everything else and edit and finish your edits here, you can now go into prototype mode and, yep, got it. You can go into prototype mode. Let me zoom out a bit. And I could now start wiring this stuff together, just even though this is like a one-page site, but I can start wiring this stuff together just like I would for any other app or any other website that I designed from scratch. So that is it. That is Adobe XD, 10 things that beginners want to know how to do. And I know I kind of went through a lot of things, some things kind of quickly, but that's the beauty of the web is you can rewatch this and you can slow it down and you can do it step by step and follow along. So Adobe XD is awesome for prototyping, for building this content and showing people the idea before you invest the time in the actual coding of your apps or coding of your websites and building it out. And then of course, once you're here, you can always export this stuff out to actually be used as part of the final design. So with that said, thanks for watching and we will catch you on the next one. Bye everybody.